Oz Pearlman, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ken, thanks for having me.
You know, this is crazy because normally I spend a lot of time preparing for a show like this, whether it's someone has done something in a book or they've done something. And I spend a lot of time preparing and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to ask and what would be interesting to the audience. But in this case, it's fun because we're just going to kind of freewheel this thing. And the reason I say that is because for those out there listening, I had the pleasure of talking with Oz a couple of weeks ago. And I was asked to have a conversation with him. We're both working on projects that were kind of similar at the time. And he just wanted to see what my experiences were. And I thought we'd be on this phone call for 10 minutes.
Right.
But I think we cracked almost an hour. And it was such an amazing conversation that I wanted to make sure that I got a chance to see and talk with you again. So Oz Pearlman, they describe you as a mentalist, a mind reader, a magician. And I know you're also a hardcore sports enthusiast. You're an MC. You're you do all these things. You're an entrepreneur, certainly. For I think most people understand what they think a mind reader is, or what they think a magician is. What exactly is a mentalist?
Well, I think most people don't really mind readers. It sounds more of a supernatural term, but a mentalist is kind of a subset of magic, whereby card tricks and coin tricks, cutting ladies in half, putting them back together, the traditional visual things you can think of. Mentalism happens more inside your brain. It's less about being able to manipulate your eyes with fast hands. They think and kind of reverse engineering.
You know what? I think you froze. I think you froze up there.
Would. It's not really being done. To be honest, I froze up.
Yeah, you froze up.
Am I back?
Can you get to a better connection? Because I have a pretty good connection over here. So I think.
I wonder what's going on. Usually my Wi-Fi is pretty good. You know what? Head over for a moment. I'm going to go over here. See how we're doing. Hold on. Bring this over. I'm worried that if we go in my office, my daughter might be she's running around. She's not sleeping. She just cut her nap recently.
Well, that so really doesn't matter to me.
I've lost the 2-year-old nap.
It certainly doesn't matter to me if it doesn't matter to you.
So, she might be loud, but no, I think we've got a Wi-Fi. I've got an extender right here, so we should be good. I wonder why it dipped out. I think if we have any issues, I'm going to head into my office.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to just ask you that question one more time, and then
Sure.
they'll split it up. So I think most people know what the word mind reader is, at least to them, or a magician or whatever. What exactly is a mentalist?
A mentalist is a field within magic where instead of having fast hands to fool the eyes, I've just learned directly how to get inside people's heads to kind of make it seem as if I know how they're behaving, what they're thinking. And I'm using a lot of different tactics within the field of magic and science to do this. So it's designed to be entertaining and fooling, but at the same time, it is a skill that is learned and acquired over time. It is not a supernatural or psychic ability.
Do you get people at the dinner table who go, "Hey man, stop that. I know what you're doing here right now."
I'm like, "You wanted to order fries with that, right?" And they're like, "How'd you know?" I go, "Sweet potato, get those too." I don't do it in day to day quite as often as people would think. Other soft skills surrounding it are very good. A good memory, knowing how to read a room, reading people's body language is very helpful in day-to-day life, but I'm not using this as kind of a superpower, if you will. It's something I have to focus on and do in my shows, and it's done within the construct of a performance. So I can't just sit down at a poker table and clean everybody out, or I would have. There's certain skills that work. Like I said, it's exactly the same as a movie. The director can't really do supernatural things, or they're filming something in a certain way where the director gets to point the camera. So when I'm doing my show, I get to have people repeat things, speak in a certain way, and I can read them based on the tactics I use. It doesn't apply to everything in life.
So take us back a little bit. When did you first know that, wow, I have this thing? I mean, I have this ability. When did that first show itself for you?
For me, it was as a teenager. That's when I started at age 13 to start doing magic, card tricks, sleight of hand tricks, and started kind of my hustle, which is I was doing this since I was 14, semi-professionally, to make money, to kind of pay for my additional tricks. It's kind of like, I need to get more props and more books and more videos. And my mom and dad weren't gonna just chalk up an allowance. They said, well, if you want to do this, prove it and show us that you've got the drive and determination. Started doing kids parties, started working at restaurants, which I credit a tremendous amount of my success for working at restaurants as a performer. And at some point I was actually a busboy, and I cleaned bathrooms, started from the bottom and moved my way up. But learn kind of the ins and outs and how to approach people, and just sales 101. If you're walking up to a restaurant, to people at a restaurant that don't know who you are, don't really want you there, and you can sell them, you can sell anybody.
Yeah, that is an absolute fact. That's the old blue collar grind. I really love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me about the very first show, the very first big show that you had. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm on a stage in front of hundreds of people. What was that like? Was that like an uncomfortable thing for you because it was different and new, or how'd that go?
Well, there's kind of different, I think there's different moments that would, the big show to you might be different than the big show to me. So when I worked at this restaurant, what ended up happening here is I had, oops, sorry about that. I had a woman who took my business card who did not seem to like me. This was the strangest part. I didn't think she liked me at all, but she asked for my business card. I had just gotten them printed. I think I had maybe 50 of them from Kinko's to date myself. These little bad boys that weren't even color, they were black and white. They were perfect. I still have a copy of every business card I've ever had since I was 14. Which is in my little scrapbook.
Awesome.
And she ends up hiring me for this company called National Tire and Battery, NTB. And I grew up in Michigan. And this was during the heyday of the Red Wings. Steve Yzerman, Nick Coffey, Paul Cicarelli, Nick Lidstrom. So all these guys were future Hall of Famers, Hockey Town, USA, man. And I got hired to do 3 grand openings. When they called me, I didn't even know what to price it at. They called and they thought there was going to be, who's going to book you? I'm like some 14-year-old twerp. It was like, what do you charge? I'm like, I don't even know. And I didn't know, but they booked me for 3 of these grand openings. And at each one of these was one of these hockey players. So you had people wrapped around the corner, taking photos, and I was entertaining the people while they were in line to get Stevie Yzerman's autograph. And so I ended up getting pictures with all of these players as a kid, and then being in the newspaper, and it was just incredible. So, in certain instances, I think that some people would be scared and say, oh, I can't really do that. I've always been the person who says yes, and then I figure it out afterwards. So you need that pressure and that push to the next level to elevate you. You can't sit in your comfort zone all the time. And I learned that lesson young, and I think I didn't really know any better, which sometimes is the best way to do it, right? If somebody tells you, hey, what are you, crazy? You're going to do a show for these guys? You might actually scare yourself, but I didn't know any better, and that's how I've always operated.
A lot of people think that, in order to grow, you have to reach those uncomfortable moments. I mean, you have, that's why I asked the question. You have to get to, public speaking isn't comfortable for a lot of people, but once they do it, they look back and go, wow, so what's the next uncomfortable thing I'm going to try and do? Tell me about the craziest moment you've had on stage where you were working with somebody and you either a reaction you didn't expect or something that just, really wowed the crowd.
I mean, that's every time I do this is a different story. It's not, what I mean? It's not like a comedian where the audience interaction is joke, laugh, or there's hecklers and stuff like that. Same with singers. Mine is very dynamic and fluid. You've got to be very in the moment. And I've just had so many of those kind of, you don't know what's about to happen. On the biggest stage of all, which was America's Got Talent, I was on that show performing Radio City Music Hall live, which means that it's airing as I'm doing it for 12 to 14 million people that are watching.
Lots of pressure there.
Oh, crazy pressure, because for singers, they have a defined set. Does that make sense? They're singing 90 seconds or 2 minutes, and not a lot really, I don't want to say can go wrong. I don't want to judge singers, but it's a very clean type of thing. You sing, it's over, it's done. Mine has a lot of risk, where if something goes wrong, what do I do? How do you get yourself out of it?
It's
on
over.
Stage, I have time, but here live, we're going to commercial, and that commercial is not stopping for me or anyone else. So I had one of those moments during the finale of America's Got Talent where it went almost cataclysmically wrong. Like, I can tell you, it came this close, like a razor's edge to going completely wrong, and somehow pulled it out. And I didn't look any scared, but if you could have had an EKG strapped to my chest, you probably saw my panic. But I kept it cool, and I think that's what really defines a professional, is knowing how to act and how to behave when things aren't going right. Because if you fall apart, that's just, you're not going to make it to the next level.
So when you looked at that situation, was it because some people's minds are just tougher to read than others, or it just the what you were trying to get they couldn't give to you, or that they couldn't show it to you, or what do you think happened there?
It's just things are unpredictable. If I always took the safe road and did things that I knew would work, I feel like for the audience, kind of like the same way a danger act, you can sense when an act that's supposed to be dangerous isn't. Like, oh, this guy or this girl does this every day, and you don't feel that trepidation. So with me, I kept pushing the envelope of doing things that were legitimately challenging and risky, whereby there's a lot of ways that this could not work. It's very complicated. For example, they all went and sat in chairs and moved around as much as they wanted. And then I handed them all envelopes and they switched the envelopes around. And then when they opened the envelopes, inside was a sheet of paper with the color, like they were on chairs that when like they had cloths on them that got pulled away. And the envelope they picked was the same color as the chair, was the same one all the way through. And then when they turned them around, it was pictures and names of people they thought of. There was a million ways that could go wrong. Like
Oh
anybody,
my God.
says, how did that happen? And I told them the same thing. That could have gone really wrong, but I took a big swing. I wasn't going for a single or a double. I was going for a
Right.
walk-off grand slam, and it was do or die. And that's how I like to live. And I think that's what's kind of helped me reach the different levels within my profession, because some people aren't willing to take those chances.
So we're talking with Oz Pearlman, again, mentalist, mind reader, magician. I'm going to add a few. Obviously, he's a hardcore sports enthusiast, master of ceremonies, public speaker, and an entrepreneur. We're going to get to that in a second. So I was looking on your bios and some of the reviews, and one of them it said, "How the I'm assuming F does he do that?" So
Right.
when someone asks you that question, how do you answer that?
I generally tell them, you know what I mean? It's not too good for my job security to tell you that. I tell you, I got to kill you. But no, this is a trade that deals in secrets. So it's kind of proprietary information. You're not going to find out what's in Coca-Cola. It tastes great, but you are going to be led on a path during my show where you learn little tidbits. I like to call it spreading breadcrumbs, so that hooks you. And so you learn, for example, in my show, I'll do a human lie detector test, and I'll teach the crowd a little bit about notice what just happened, how the person paused for that answer. Now we know that person wasn't telling the truth, and they go, oh, wow. And you glean a little bit of information. But once I give you 10 or 20%, I then up it by a level, and you go, well, how'd you just do that one? I go, that one I'm not going to tell you. So I want the audience to come along with me for a ride, have some takeaways, feel like they're going to get home and be able to try a couple cool things. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to leave you wanting more and still blown away. I'm not going to tip my full hand. But
so let's talk about that. I would imagine if you tried to go to somebody else's show, you might sit in the audience and go, "Oh, I know how he did that," or "I know how she did
yes,
that." Is there, first off, is that true? And secondly, is there someone that blows your mind that you just can't, like, how the heck did he do that?
totally. So there's different fields. Like, for example, I'll go see a David Copperfield show with big illusions, and that's not my specialty. So I will not know how it's all done. But people within my own trade, within the mentalist community, I know the tactics they're using. It's kind of like a card cheat tends to know what to look for. That's why the casinos hire the card cheats. The best
Yeah.
card cheats end up working for the casinos.
Right.
The same thing applies here, where we tend to be a small, tight-knit group of mentalists. We all know each other, like the biggest names in the world and the people that do the most work. And the people, if you see them on TV, this person, it's very likely that we're in a WhatsApp group together, because we're a small, tight-knit community. It's the supply and demand curve is very skewed, where the supply is very, very low and the demand is very, very high, which over time will probably lead to there being more mentalists, because it's a great craft, but not that many people have the stomach for it. It's very difficult to learn. It's very challenging to do, and it's a steep learning curve, where at the beginning, you're probably not going to be very good, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of failure. And a lot of people have trouble dealing with rejection, dealing with failure. And imagine, most people say that public speaking is the worst. I can tell you what's worse than public speaking is being in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people, and bombing because the tricks don't work. You say,
Right.
hey, think of a place you want to go, or think of a person, you get it wrong over and over and over. You're not going to want to do that again and subject yourself to that torture. So I love when I get fooled by other mentalists. It is the best feeling in the world, to savor that feeling, because I so rarely get it now, because I know how everything works.
So you took my next question, which is amazing, which
I knew.
you probably knew I was. can this be learned? I'll tell you why I asked this, because, in my book, Blue Collar Cash, I talk a lot about entrepreneurship and how I think there's these characteristics. There's vision and faith and courage and initiative and humility and resistance, persistence, resilience, simplicity, generosity, all these types of things that make up entrepreneurs. But I wasn't born that way. Okay. I acquired these skills because there was a why in front of all of that. Like, why am I doing any of this anyway? And I believe that all entrepreneurs, I think that anyone can be an entrepreneur, assuming they have a reason why. Okay. I think
Right?
we all have those characteristics within us, and we just need a reason for them to come out. Okay. Like, I have this vision for something I want to do. So therefore, all these things come out of me, and then I can perform. So if you had to define, because you are an entrepreneur in your own right, with the
Sure.
business that you've built around all of this. If you had to define entrepreneur, what does it mean to you?
I think an entrepreneur is somebody with a drive to succeed. And I think that's kind of, and also to carve their own path. Because by virtue of an entrepreneur, you're either starting a company, which could be a skill, a service, a large business eventually that it becomes, but you want to chart your own course, and you don't want to have somebody else kind of giving you the orders or having a boss that's showing you. I'm not saying you can't have a mentor or people that you admire or that respect and that you want to get advice from. But I think the real mark of an entrepreneur is somebody who makes the decision that I'm going to do something, and whether or not it makes money or not, but you just decide, I'm going to chart my own course. I get to decide how we move forward, what we're going to do. And that's different for everybody. For yours, your trade was very different than my trade. And some of these things you stumble into, some of them are your passion, and a hobby turns into something that becomes good fortune where it's work. And that's the best thing of all, is if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So that's a great way to look at it. And I think everybody wants that. Or you can be an entrepreneur on the side. You can still have your 9 to 5 or your day job as you build up something on the side. I think Shark Tank, like that show, really showed the nation and the
Yeah.
world what you can do, just with some real hustle and determination and drive.
You're exactly right. And I always begin, whenever anyone asks me that question. Again, in the book, I write about these characteristics, and I always begin with the word vision. Okay. Because I don't believe anything happens until you see it first.
Yep.
You can't even back your car out of a driveway and then put it in drive and go, where the heck am I going? I mean, there's always a vision for everything that you do. And I think that that's the part of the brain that we don't really use too much. We react to things instead of proact to things. So if you had to take the word vision, how would you apply it to particularly what you do?
I think for me, what's been a key characteristic of vision is defining my markets, which I think in a lot of businesses where there's no set path, for example, to become an engineer, I went to school for engineering. You do get good grades at math, you do well at science, you take an ACT or SAT, right? There's a very strict formula. You get into college, you get your 4-year degree, you interview, you get a job. It's very linear and it's very delineated as to what you do. Good luck figuring out how do you become a famous mentalist. I'm yet to find that path. I'm still trying to figure it out myself.
Right.
So Ken, I think in these types of instances, vision is what you said, is instead of life happening to you, you define what life is going to be. You chart ahead, you hopefully write down, where do I want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What are my dream goals in life? And I start executing on them. And I realized early on, I wanted to work smarter, not harder. And so for me, that became, I want quality shows, not just quantity of shows. Because I was at a point in my life where I had a nonstop quantity of shows. I was working more and more and doing parties, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And I started realizing this wasn't a sustainable future for me, because I never get to see my wife.
Sure.
And I just gotten married. And if we have kids, I'm never going to see them either. So what I ended up doing was finding those paths, which is, for me, it ended up being corporate work and doing corporate events, which I realized there's all these big conferences, there's all these conventions, incentive travel, all these different things where I fit very well. I know the lingo, I know the terminology. And I defined myself when I went on the show America's Got Talent as a corporate entertainer. And that was a very, very conscious decision I made. A lot of people thought, oh, you kind of know. I knew what I wanted to create as a brand, and acted accordingly during. My show was squeaky clean. I knew who it appealed to. And I did that on purpose because I saw where I wanted to be. And this is now 7 years later. I feel I did a really great job of executing my goals since then. And now I even see where I want to be a year and 3 years and 5 years from now. And I'm hopefully executing towards those goals as well.
You know, we talk about how all of us are so good at planning vacations. And really, a vacation is nothing more than a vision that happens 3 or 4 months down the road. You know, I'm going to the beach in 6 months. I'm going to have my beach chair. I'm going to have my suntan lotion. I'm going to have the ocean and the breeze and the towel and my drink and my umbrella and my reading, whatever. We're all so good at planning those things. And I always talk about, why aren't we good at planning the rest of our life the way we plan a vacation? Because we're all experts at visualizing a vacation. So I always talk about how vision creates almost everything that you do. But I also think that if you focus hard enough on something, your brain automatically attracts it to you. I bought my first sports car with a 7-year plan. I mean, I got a brochure once a year for 7 years. And every time I walked into that store, the dealer looked at me and laughed. And by the 4th or 5th year, they're like, you know what? I think you're serious. I think you're actually going to buy this car someday. And on that 6.5 year, I went in there and I actually did it. And I believe that your mind attracts you to the things that you really focus on. Is that something that works with you and what you do?
Big time. I mean, in a major way in my business, but even more so, I like to race. I like to run marathons and ultra marathons. And the visualizations that I use for that is when I'm training, I see myself running the race. I literally feel it. I'm in the moment. Olympics athletes will have done that race hundreds and hundreds of times in their mind before they ever get on the start line. And so I do the same thing. And that way, when you get there, you're prepared for it and you know what to expect, and you're not tight. You've loosened up and you're ready for the moment. And so I am constantly doing that with shows. I'm as in the moment as I can ever be. Like when you talk about life and experiencing this present moment and being dialed in, that's where it's at. It's generally for me racing and doing the shows. Because in the shows, if I'm not hyper focused and fully paying attention to everything around me, if I'm thinking, what am I having for dinner later, or who's picking up the kids tomorrow at 8 a.m., I'm not going to be able to do my show. Like literally, I can't execute and do the things that I'm supposed to do mentally because it takes so much focus and attention to do one lapse or slip and things go wrong.
Well, you know, it's funny because you kind of glossed over that you do marathons, but for everyone out there listening, Oz runs 130-mile marathons. Okay. We're not talking about running in your 5K local at the local town that you live in. We're talking about running for hours and hours and hours. And I guess for most people who couldn't even imagine running a regular marathon, when did you jump from the typical 20-some mile marathon to a 100-miler? How did that happen?
So yeah, like a traditional marathon is 26.2 miles. Those have become very popular. And then over the last 20 years, this new iteration, there's called ultra marathons, which can be 50 miles, 100 miles, 150 miles, even longer. You know, there's no limit to how crazy people are. The human spirit is indomitable. But when was my first one? Was in 2006. So yeah, about 16 years ago, I had been running marathons for 3 or 4 years. And that's when I did my first one, which was a 50-mile race. And then I jumped over, did 100 miles. I've done a bunch of 100-milers. I did a race in Death Valley. It's very famous. It's called Badwater. It's considered the world's toughest foot race because you do it in the middle of July in Death Valley. So the year
Wow.
I did it, the temperatures exceeded 125 degrees. So it is toasty. It is toasty.
Oh my God.
And you're essentially running the equivalent of 5 marathons in a row. And that tests your mental strength, tests your physical, and really just tests your willpower, which is how committed are you to doing this? Because it's going to be a rough road. There's no way you're going to get through that without some bumps of feeling miserable. And I really enjoyed the challenge.
We have just a few minutes left with the O's, but again, that 27th mile, that 38th mile, that 59th mile, that 87th mile, how do you keep your mind in that, especially in an oven like you were out there in that crazy place?
I mean, I can tell you it's kind of like big goals in life, which is I have a lot of people that will ask me to kind of be a mentor to them. And they're, I see somebody who was me 20 years ago, right? Some like 18 or 20-year-old kid who's waiting for everything to happen right away, right? They see and they want it all now. It's kind of like if you go into all you can eat buffet and you just want to pile your plate up and eat it all now. And somebody's saying, you know what, eat slow. Let's have an appetizer. Let's have a meal. And so I have a lot of people that they want it all now. And the same thing applies in an ultra marathon. If you're at mile 10 or 15 and you start feeling not good, the worst thing you can ever do is say to yourself, I have 115 miles left, because that will break your brain. So no, you break down a goal, you break down what you have to do in a very small, sizable, easily digestible portions. And I'll say, I need to just see my crew in 3 miles, or I need to get to this, and then I'm going to have a Gatorade. You need to just say, I'm going to get to this next step, this little baby step. And when I get there, I'll think about the next thing. But your brain does not extend past your next deliverable or your next goal. And I found that to be the case. Is it's overwhelming when you start to think about these things the same way that you're saying. What do you do at mile 59, 87? You don't think about mile 87 when you're at mile 20, and you don't think about it. You let your brain go. And I think that a lot of it is people say, well, what are you thinking about? Are you bored? I go, I'm never bored. Honestly, when I'm running like that, I'm feeling as alive as I ever feel. I'm constantly checking on my body. How do I feel? I'm letting myself daydream, which is so rare that you do nowadays, because you're always caught in the rat race. When do you ever turn your phone off, computer off, family, the kids, the work, and just zone out? And I think we as humans need that. You need that return to a brain state that just allows you to kind of go. That's where I get my creative bursts. That's where I come up with the best ideas for business, for creative pursuits, like my work, when I make up new tricks to do on TV and in my stage shows. It's always when I'm running or in the shower. It's never when I'm sitting on my phone or in front of the computer, ever.
Well, so basically what you're doing is you're turning all your if goals into when goals, which is what I talk a lot about in the book. I mean, let's never talk about if, let's only talk about when. And if
Yeah.
that when is in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, whatever, chop it into a lot of little pieces and hit those pieces so you know you're progressing and you have these little mini wins along the way.
Yeah,
So
that's it. Mini wins, because they add up, and you get that positive feedback loop where you get that dopamine, you feel good, you got through this, you got through this. It becomes like, I can get through all of it.
cool. One thing I'd like to have you help me with, first off, turn on your, let me see if I can fix this guy hat for a second. Okay. So I'm a golfer, right?
Oh.
And I love to golf, and invariably I can be even par through 6, 7, 8 holes, maybe 1 or 2 over through 12 or 13. I want to shoot somewhere in the mid to low 70s, which I've done many times. But invariably, if I'm doing well on hole 14, 15, or 16, and I don't think about my score, I really don't think I do. Maybe subconsciously I do, but I always find a way to get myself back to 81 or 82 or 83. What am I doing on hole 13, 14, and 15 that I might not even know I'm doing? Can you even give a thought to that?
I think there's a tension that comes into people. So I can give you a great example for my own. I'm not necessarily a golfer, but I can tell you, when I did America's Got Talent, when I auditioned the first time, because I didn't get on the first time I tried, I went in there and I was nervous. I really had trepidation. I had big hopes on it. And then when it didn't work out, it was kind of a weight off my shoulders. So when I came back a second time, I didn't care. I literally thought, if I don't get it, my life goes on, because I already did that. I already felt the feeling of failure. I didn't get on. And you know what happened? Life went on. Still a great show, still had a business, still built myself up. So I realized this doesn't matter. And so when you go into something not caring, keep in mind, not caring in a way where you're just going to like start swinging for the fences and having terrible things, but there's a looseness associated. Actors will tell you the same thing when they go in for auditions where they don't think they're getting the part anyway. They go in there and they have the best audition because they don't care, and their body doesn't have that tension. And the same thing applies. The more you can troubleshoot, the better. With golf, I know it's such a Zen state where
It is.
once you get dialed in, it's almost like the way blackjack, when people play blackjack, they catch hot streaks and they start betting higher because they win over and over and over, even though statistically it shouldn't matter because the deck is shuffled. But for some reason, when people get hot, they stay hot. And how do you not cool down? So I don't know how you analyze that when you're doing golf and seeing what it is that's so different. Is it muscle tension? Is it muscle memory? Is it the fact that you get fatigued as you get in the later stages? Or do you ever have it where you're not doing great at the beginning and then you continue at the end and get stronger? Those are all things to piece together. I like to iterate and learn. So I analyze data in my shows and just see what worked, what didn't work, and try to improve for the next time.
So finally, in the book, I talk a lot about comfort, peace, and freedom. I think we all should be chasing a certain nirvana. And that nirvana is, what's your version of comfort, peace, and freedom? That's like a triangle of terms that actually interact with each other or interdepend on each other. And everyone has their own level of that. Everyone has their own, man, if I could live this way, that would be really, really cool. So where do you find yourself, Oz, when you're in your most comfortable place? Where would that be?
A couple different places. I mean, one of them is definitely out running. It's just where I feel the most zen, relaxed. Time just passes in a certain way. And that runner's high that I think I'm hooked on, and so many other runners or people that exercise or work out. Exercise truly is something that I think regulates your mood. They've shown time and again that with cases of anxiety, depression, it's not going to necessarily fix it, but it is as good as certain medicines at improving those conditions, because you need to be out there moving your body. That's our natural state. So that's one of my favorite things, being with my kids and my wife. Amazing. Like you talk about freedom. That's what all the rest of this is about. The financial freedom is, yeah, you can buy stuff, but at a certain point, you'll realize in life, like I could have said to myself, great advice from 10 years ago, money is a tool that buys you the things that you want in life, more so than, I mean, if you don't have food or a roof over your head, you need those things, right? You need those, the hierarchy of things. But once you've got shelter, food, comfort, and you're not working yourself to the bone, where you have options in your life, which is something not everybody has by any stretch of the imagination. Once you get that, if you can get that, more and more money does not necessarily elevate your happiness. I think you start to realize your mortality, or in that there's only so many years you have on this earth, and you don't know how many they're going to be. And you need to spend some of that time, not just busting your butt, but enjoying it. And for me, that's being with my kids who are young. These moments don't come back again. So I know that when I'm trading off to go fly to an event somewhere, I'm trading off that time that I'll never get back with them. And I've become a lot more selective on what I say no to. And there's a power to saying no. So yeah, just being with them. Like I watched the World Cup. My daughter was sitting with me. We were cheering. She's 2. And just like, how can I do better than that? That's an absolute freedom and luxury I have, being my own boss. It's incredible.
Yeah, things are things unless they generate memories that you can take forever. That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, whether it's one of my cars or my golf trips or being on the boat or whatever it is, those are things. But if you don't create memories with those things, then they're just inanimate objects. And you're exactly right there. I think for me,
Right.
the peaceful moment is, I'd love to say it's on the golf course, but I already discussed with you, I get kind of jacked up on the golf course. So
Right.
for me, it's walking my dogs in the park. I mean, there's just nothing better than having a deep forest that I can work into with with my dogs, and maybe meeting some people along the way. And that's just an awesome place to have some peace. So final thing, and I appreciate your time today. I really do. I was talking with Oz Pearlman. We started this show before we came on with a little bit of a potentially something that we might do
You
together
discuss
here.
something. I'm going to interject real quick, because I'm going to switch the question on you. You said comfort, freedom, and what was the last one?
Peace.
And peace is a big one. And this is what I want you to focus on, because comfort, you've built a business over years. Freedom is what you're also trying to give to other people with your book. That's blue collar cash. It's what's the vision. And I think your book is a series of steps from what you've told me and what I've learned from your readers is steps to create your dream, right? And so once you get that dream, you got to live life. You got to live that dream. If you're just busting your butt nonstop 24/7, what's in it for you? So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to make you visualize this. I want you to close your eyes.
Okay.
And I want you to imagine you spin a globe. Okay. You spin a globe. And Ken, this is all about that last word, which is dream. And I want you to dream that you are planting your finger on one spot. Open your eyes. Bam, right there on the globe that you've never been to before. So this is why I wanted you to kind of look at a map and see it visually, because now you're seeing it in a globe. And number one place in the world you would love to go. Can you imagine being there right now?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to tell you a couple things. The way I defined it is a place, could be a city, could be a country, could be other. This could have been, a small village. I think you went more broad. I think that you like giving people tangible goals, but that aren't too specific and nitpicky. You allow them, it's not if, it's when. So I think you're dreaming of going to this place. I think it's a country. I don't think it's a city. I think you want to travel around. I think this is a country. Am I right?
You are right.
And now some of the people are going to be listening to this as a podcast. Some are going to see it visually. We're on video. What I'd like you to do is off camera. So there's no way I can see. I want you to take a piece of paper. And I want you to write down the name of this country off camera. So there's no possible way I could see what you are writing.
Okay.
And then, Ken, I want to make sure that everybody knows there is no way that I could have gleaned this information from a past conversation or reading your book or a past podcast. Have you ever mentioned this, that this is the place, or did you just think of this today, now, when I asked you first to do it, in the moment, right? This is not something that was pre-set up.
No, we talked about this. I mean, it's today. This is
Today. This happened today. This never happened before today. The place I think for you is somewhere where I don't see you sitting on a beach and doing nothing. You get bored. So you want adventure. You want some history. A very common choice, I'm going to tell you, in Europe is Italy and France, but I don't think you would have done that. In fact, I think you might have been to one of these places before. I think you ended up going, you like clean lines, you like design. Sweden, isn't it? It's Sweden. Am I right? Show
You
the
gotta be
paper.
kidding me. You have got to be kidding me.
He has written down for the record Sweden on a piece of paper, folks. We just showed it to us for the first time.
That is unbelievable. How did you, well, I was going to say, how at blank did you do that? That is unbelievable.
Now you
Oh
know where
my
the quote
gosh.
came from. How the blank did you do it? How the bleep did you do it? Well, you know what? A lot more to come. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. As
Yeah.
you know, you've written a book, and that's on my next set of goals is getting a book as well, to start putting some of these thoughts down on paper and creating something that's going to be great for a reader, something that's going to really give them tremendous value and that's never been done
Well,
before.
when you write it, come back because we're going to talk all about your book and we're going to see if we can get it out to the world. I think that's just fantastic. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, thanks, Ken. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you know, all the social media, Twitter. I use Instagram the most to kind of publicize my TV appearances and where I'm going to be touring. It's at Oz the Mentalist. My name is a weird one. It looks like Oz. It should be like the Wizard of Oz, but it's an Israeli name, so it's pronounced Oz. So it's OZ the Mentalist. And you can find me everywhere on Twitter, Instagram, and you'll see me. I just had a bunch of stuff with the NFL. If you're a football fan, with Tom Brady, with the Ravens, with the Seahawks, and there's a lot more stuff coming up in the sports world. Well, you'll see me on ESPN and some other channels. So a lot more coming up, and I'm big on CNBC, Fox Business. I do a lot of stuff with the financial networks as well.
Oz Pearlman, it's been an absolute blast hanging with you today, and good luck on your book and everything that you're doing. And I hope we can talk again soon.
You
Really
got it, Ken.
appreciate your time. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, man. Keep up the great work.
Yep, you as well.